Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel that takes on all things narcissistic. I'm hoping that this channel enlightens you about this rather toxic relationship pattern and gives you some tools on how to navigate these rather treacherous waters. Today we're going to take on a very interesting question on this channel, and it's going to be this idea of, many people have asked me this, is there a way to let other people know that someone in your group or your family or something like that is a narcissist? And this is an idea, again, came from people watching these videos saying, I'd really love to know, is this even something that's possible? Again, as always, it's always helpful to hear what people's experiences are. And if any of you have ever either been very successful or found an epic fail when you tried to tell other people that someone you knew was narcissistic, would love to hear a little bit about that and maybe some pointers you'd have for how you do it. But before we get on to this topic, as always, I invite you, if you like this video, please hit like. If you would like to subscribe to this channel, please hit that subscribe button. And if you hit that bell, you'll get notifications every time we put out new content. So let's ask this question. Is there actually a way you can let other people know about a narcissist in their midst? Honestly, this could be the shortest video I ever made, and I could say, no, there's not. Bye. It's a bit more subtle than that, and there are a few tricks out there, but overall, it's very, very hard to be able to call someone out in your midst as being a narcissist. Now, one of the most devastating things about narcissistic abuse, whether it's happening in your family, in your workplace, with a friend, and obviously with your partner, at some level, what many people don't get, and God knows it would have made a difference, it would help so much if other people could see it. You'd feel less upside down if other people were acknowledging this is toxic. If even one other person got it, that would be normalizing. And if most people could get it, then you'd probably be able to dust off, get your strength, and be able to do what you needed to stay healthy, even if you couldn't get out of the relationship. But alas, that often does not happen. And if you try to show other people the narcissism or the narcissistic qualities in the person in your life who is narcissistic, it is more likely to backfire on you. People might call you out as petty, that you're a bad person who labels people, that you're unforgiving, or they may just gaslight you, and people might tell you that you're too sensitive, or you're the one who has the problem, or better yet, you're the one who's narcissistic. For so many people, they aren't aware that not only can you not call out a narcissist, and I have a video on that, why you can't call out a narcissist, you actually really can't even call them out to other people. You can't call them out to themselves, and you can't call them out to other people. The resistance you will encounter from other people will be quite compelling. As a child, if you came from a narcissistic family system, you may have seen that things were not quite right in your family and it didn't feel good. But as most kids from narcissistic family systems do, you may have made excuses and justifications and rationalizations for their behavior, or blamed yourself, or just assumed that this was normal and this is how families are. Then you roll into adulthood, and you may then start to become aware that, yikes, these patterns are actually toxic. And so you might try a variety of strategies like going gray rock, maybe have no contact, maybe attempt to set boundaries, and others in your family may call you out for what you were doing. But if you make the mistake of saying, hey, guess what, everyone? Mom's a narcissist. That's why she is so invalidating, etc., etc. There is a good chance that you will be called out by your family system in many different ways. You might hear, oh, how could you? Mom endured so much pain during her own childhood, and yet in her own life she still made you her priority. How can you be so dismissive of an old woman, etc., etc.? It is quite likely that people in your family may have also become her flying monkeys, have certainly been your parents' enabler, and wouldn't listen to you if you wanted, because if they got it all along, they would have been a better support earlier. And that's the bottom line. The people who already did see it, did get it. Those were the people who were already finding little ways to support you. Now maybe they didn't literally call your partner or your family member or whoever the narcissist in your life is. Maybe they didn't literally call them out as a narcissist, but they found little ways to support you. And saying things that led you and support you to know that they got it and knew that at a minimum they saw that that narcissistic person did not treat you well and attempted at least to uplift you. The challenge really comes up when it's your partner, especially when the world is telling you what a great guy you're married to, what a great gal she is. And you get the emotional and the psychological abuse behind closed doors when nobody's looking. It can literally leave you feeling physically ill watching them put on their big show in front of colleagues, at family gatherings, at social events, and everyone just thinking, oh, gosh, you're so lucky. What a great person you've got in your life. And then knowing that you're going to have to face this narcissistic partner's invalidation or wrath. You probably faced it before the event and will probably face it again when you get home. In many ways, their two-facedness builds a wall that makes it all but impossible to shine a light on what is happening in your relationship to other people. In most cases, lots of people will gaslight you. Oh, come on. It can't be that bad in your relationship. He's such a nice guy. Or, what are you complaining about? I wish my wife was like her. It's a horrific moment because you know that your cries for help will go unheeded. Many people stay silent for years and even decades because they believe, and honestly, perhaps rightfully so, that no one will understand them when they share what the narcissist has been doing to them, has been saying to them. And an interesting twist is that in our very materialistic world, this can be even more pronounced if for some reason you have a nice home or a nice lifestyle or a nice car or you don't have to work, in part because your partner's finances or work. Sadly, those may be the other kinds of things that other people covet. So they may see your narcissistic partner as being a good provider, and that somehow that is supposed to negate any concerns you have about the relationship. And reality check, it doesn't. Buying you a nice necklace or a new car or a cool vacation doesn't give someone permission to psychologically abuse you. If you do call your narcissistic partner out to other people, you tell other people what this person, your partner, is really about, especially if the narcissist looks good to the world, you will face the unsettling experience of not being believed, of being gaslighted, being invalidated even more than you are, or even being called ungrateful by other people. Unless you really have a smoking gun, for example, a video of them having sex with someone else, or bank statements very clearly showing their financial irresponsibility, or perhaps video of the narcissist physically assaulting you, most people will minimize what you are experiencing. As I said, some of this is about maintaining their own illusions about life, about their own lives, about their own status quo. And it's easier for them to be blind to you than to be willing to open their eyes to your narcissistic relationship, and perhaps to their own. And because most people do not fully understand narcissistic relationship patterns, they hold on to the tired fantasy that anybody can change, and no matter how difficult their personality, they can change. And that can then put this impossible onus on you to do the impossible, which is to attempt to change the narcissist. Now, all of this can really rear its ugly head in couples therapy. If you have a couples therapist who does not understand narcissism or who sees all relationships as potentially salvageable or fixable through good communication, they too may be very vulnerable to the charms of the narcissist. I've worked with dozens of clients over the years who have told me that the couples therapist totally fell for the narcissist's show of charm and charisma and confidence and was unable to call their toxic patterns out when they showed up in therapy. That therapist not calling it out kept those people stuck in these marriages for years and even decades. If you were to try to call the narcissist out to the therapist, more often than not, you would be met with concerns by many therapists that you're labeling your partner or playing armchair therapist or don't really understand what you're talking about, or that you shouldn't be diagnosing your partner. And many people, when they hear that, they feel like, oh God, I didn't stay in my lane, I shouldn't have done that, maybe I am wrong. In the workplace, this can be a nightmare. Most HR departments don't understand and don't want to hear about narcissism. They tend to judge events on the basis of events. They come from a risk management perspective that's very much designed to protect the company or the organization or the institution. And they'll try little silly fix-its like, let's do online training to address whatever patterns that the narcissist is engaging in. Remember, narcissists may wreak havoc in the workplace and make other people's lives miserable. But they can also often be very good performers. Their grandiosity and arrogance means that they're often very skilled salespeople. They may push their employees so hard that their division does yield results, even though that the poor soldiers are completely shredded. And they may play underhanded games that get them the win and the promotion. So the workplace may see their performance and turn their heads the other way when they hear that they're abusing other employees. And because narcissistic abuse is sometimes hard to detect, patterns like invalidation, gaslighting, manipulation are all actually quite hard to document. And being toxic is not something that is easy to assess for during a job interview when you hire someone. What this all tells us is that it means that without documentation, you're never going to be able to call a narcissist out in a workplace. People will want to go to HR and talk about the chaos, the manipulation, the triangulation, the blame shifting, the toxic workplace culture, and teach the HR people about narcissism. Do not do it. Not only will the HR or other oversight group tell you that you have no right to use that label, they will minimize what's happening to you, especially if you don't have enough documentation, and they may write you off as the problem child and as a name caller, or that perhaps that you're the problem for having the audacity for calling a colleague out for being a narcissist. And HR departments can hide behind walls of confidentiality. So you may never find out that, in fact, that worker you called out as narcissistic may actually have many complaints against them. In the workplace, you really can never call a narcissist out. The best you can do is provide documentation for every single event and be assiduous. It makes your job harder because you need to keep the emails, the texts, the voicemails, ask to be able to record meetings, ask for detailed minutes, ensure you never meet alone with the narcissist, keep detailed diaries and journals of your work to date. Documenting starts to feel like it's its own job. But when it comes down to it, the only way to call out a narcissist at work is pretty simple. You don't call them out. Instead, you provide documentation and hope for the best. And I estimate that about 50% of the time, the company will still choose to protect the narcissist, and you will be the one who may very well leave the company or the organization to protect your own sanity. What about in public? Now, this is an interesting conundrum of our time. We have lots of public narcissists, lots. Those could be heads of countries, heads of corporations, celebrities who have large platforms, and other talking heads and all those kinds of influency type people who have the big platforms. Once again, many people seeing their wealth and their power and their influence become their enablers. Many people are unable to see the pattern for what it is. Let me share an interesting example because it actually involves ordinary people. I was reading a news story the other day which involved a very, very entitled woman saying abusive things to a man that put the man in some danger, and she was threatening to do things that were going to put the man at risk. The news report had gathered all kinds of stories about her, and they painted a picture of a combative, difficult, entitled, poorly regulated woman who had a track record of lashing out at all kinds of people in her life. I then do what I do, and I jump to the comments section of that article, and I was fascinated by the comment section way more than I was by the silly article. There were hundreds of comments, and nearly half of the comments were defending the entitled woman. I was just like, ay, 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 ay. They were saying things like, people shouldn't be so mean to her. We don't know her backstory. Maybe she just needs some compassion and love, and she will change. Or the consequences she had to face are just too severe. It's not fair to her. Despite the article sharing multiple instances of her bad behavior, commenters still said, well, maybe we don't know the whole picture. I shook my head. It was really such an interesting, striking public example of, come on, just give them a chance. They didn't know what they were doing. And right there, that tells you why you can never call them out. Because if this kind of thing happens on this sort of weird public stage, with half of the people making comments on even a random article are enabling this behavior, it really gives fodder to why you cannot call a narcissist out to other people. They will shut you down. So that cuts to the original question. How do you call a narcissist out to other people? How do you point people and say, do you see that this person is not going to be good for you or this organization or family? You know how you do it? You don't. You let their behavior speak for itself. If you slowly disengage and distance, the narcissist will find a new target. And that new target may be one of their enablers. And when the enabler starts getting flustered, you can say, I hope you're okay. It was hard to watch that happen to you. You okay? Just check in with them. Interestingly, when you don't take that moment to accuse the narcissist of being toxic, but instead plant the seed that what the narcissist did to that new target person was not okay, at least with that new target person, it plants a seed of doubt. The new target person can't paint you as a labeler anymore, and the difficult one, because you're not labeling them. Rather, they'll start paying attention maybe to the pattern. But sadly, this can take years. Now, in workplaces, documentation can help. With close friends and family, documentation can sometimes work, but it requires you to not call the narcissist out directly, but instead say, this relationship is not good for me, so I need to step away from it. But I respect other people's choices, and I have no place questioning those. Now, you're still going to get pushback and people telling you that you're being rude or you're being uppity or you're being high and mighty, but it makes a stronger statement Self-preservation definitely makes a stronger statement than calling the narcissist out. Sadly, the only way people finally get their final exam on narcissism and finally get it is when they finally endure narcissistic abuse themselves. And interestingly, I have worked with lots of folks who have experienced narcissistic abuse in adulthood, got hurt, and only then started to unearth their patterns from their own families. So this is really a long video with a short punchline. How do you call a narcissist out to other people? You don't. You give the narcissist the space they need to hurt other people, because they rarely disappoint at doing that, and that might be the only way the other people see it. And then, like so much of life, experience will become the best and, sadly, painful teacher for their enablers. So many people feel like there's no justice. Nobody sees what this narcissistic person is doing. First of all, life isn't fair, okay? So the minute you can let go of the idea that life is just or fair, it's going to make it a lot easier to manage these relationships. Number two, it's not your job to protect everyone. Now, I'm not talking in terms of kids. Kids is a different issue, and we'll get to that in a parenting series. But when it comes to other adults, if you know that they've been enabling this person, they're not going to listen to your reasoning on this. So in some ways, you step out of the way, you stop being the human shield, and you let those other people full on experience this toxicity. And you just sort of shrug your shoulders. This is why self-preservation is so important. And our sort of obsession that everyone can change, and all our love of these stories of redemption. Listen, I love redemption as much as the next person. It's just that with certain personality styles, it doesn't happen. And it's for that reason the workplace stuff happens, because they believe they can train someone to do anything. You may be able to train people to do a lot of stuff. The one thing you can't train them out of is their personality. So, short answer, don't call them out, but would love to hear your stories of what happened when you tried to call out the narcissist in your life. What happened? What was the fallout for you? Again, I hope you enjoyed this content. If you did like this video, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're enjoying this content. And as always, thank you. Bye. And as always, thank you. Bye. And as always, thank you. Bye. And as